You're listening to the Self-Made is a Myth, Make a Difference Together show with your host, Coach Tim Campsall, where we talk with successful business owners to hear the stories of their journeys in building their successful businesses. And more importantly, we recognize the folks who help them excel because we know that achieving business success is not something we can do on our own.
Hello, everyone. This is Coach Tim Campsall, and I'm your host for the Self-Made is a Myth show. And I am excited to have a fellow business owner from Massachusetts with us today. And my guest founded, check this out, the world's leading bra fit training certification course. So I am definitely going to want to hear a little bit more about that. In her downtime, she likes to make pottery. And there's a certain type of pottery that she's going to explain to us that she enjoys. And she's most proud of the knock-on effects, or how I interpreted it as the ripple effect of the work that she does, the ongoing betterment of people's lives that she's able to have when she interacts with them. And it's my pleasure to welcome Allie to the show today. Hello, Allie.
Hi, it's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, hey, let's start with having you introduce yourself. Tell us your full name and a little bit of your personal story, like where you were born and live, and about your family and hobbies.
Sure. So I'm Allie Cudby. I am the founder and CEO of Alignmint Growth Strategies, but I didn't start there. I was born in Washington, D.C. So I'm actually a native Washingtonian, which is a fairly rare thing to find. And I've lived all over the country. I went to Philadelphia for school, then moved to LA, then moved back to Philadelphia for a couple of years, New York, back to DC, Indiana, and now I am living just outside of Boston. And I started my career I've had a sort of non-linear career, but in some ways it kind of all makes sense. So I started my career in Hollywood after college, went back, and after business school went to corporate for a while. And that's sort of where I got into this world of customer experience and went out on my own, oh gosh, over 20 years ago now, yikes, and have been doing various aspects of customer experience for that amount of time, except for the left turn that I took into the wonderful world of the art and science of how a bra fits a woman's body. Let's see, married, 2 kids that are out of the house, and 2 dogs that are very much in the house all the time. So that's me.
Wonderful. So bra fitting certification training. Tell me what that means.
So women are really never taught how a bra should fit their body. And there are certain intricacies that we won't go into the details on now, but without understanding them, it's really hard to get a good fitting. And most stores don't put in the time, energy, and effort to adequately train their employees because they're, cycling through a bunch of employees because it takes time, and time is money. Yeah. And, women pay the price. And so having found this problem and realizing that at the time there was really no good option for these manufacturers and retailers and other people who are, spending their time and energy on the art and science of how a bra fits a woman's body, I created this online certification program that ended up being the global leader in its field, 6 continents served, and I just didn't get to Antarctica.
Wow, that is so cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What type of pottery?
Wheel thrown pottery. So if the most common touchstone that people have for that is the movie Ghost, which is actually pretty ancient now, but has a very famous scene of wheel thrown pottery that most potters absolutely loathe to have as the touchstone, but there you go. So yeah, that's what I like to do.
Fantastic. Well, hey, is there a funny story that your family likes to tell about you that you'd be willing to share with us today?
Yeah. So let's see. The the weekend that I was supposed to move into college as a freshman, I was a bridesmaid in a favorite cousin's wedding. And so I ended up having to move in early and then go up from Philadelphia to New York for this wedding. And my mom had read some article about the importance of bonding in those first few days of college. I heard a lot about bonding in those first few days of college, and she was pretty sure that me missing the first 36 hours of move in was going to end my college social life. So we go up to New York. I'm in the wedding. We hightail it from the wedding venue to the train station to drop me back off in Philadelphia. We jump on the first train, and lo and behold, that train was a fancy all reserve train, and those weren't the kinds of tickets that we had. So they unceremoniously dump my family off on the side at the next station. And we find out that the next train isn't going to be stopping for hours and hours and hours, like 6 hours.
Oh.
And so they'd be coming through, but they weren't going to stop. And my mom has a tizzy. And I said to myself, well, the train's coming through. They may as well just stop and pick us up. I'm just going to ask them to stop the train. So my parents are mortified. I get myself up, I go marching toward the gate guy, and they're hiding behind their magazines and just like, oh my God, Allie, you are so embarrassing. And I put on my best, 18-year-old smile and explain the situation. And the guy's like, I'll stop the train for you. And so they did. So the story that my family always tells about me is that I stopped the train.
I love it. And so you didn't miss out on the bonding time to become an awesome college student.
No, yeah, as it turned out, it all worked out.
Allie, tell us about how the business came to be, and at what point did you have the confidence that you could run your own business?
Sure. So after I graduated from business school, I ended up working at a media company and in their sort of corporate strategy group. And it was sort of an internal consulting group. And I ended up being put on a project that introduced me to this world of customer loyalty and retention. And it was really eye-opening for me. And so it changed the way that I thought about business. I had just never realized how impactful the customer experience was, because at that point in my life, I hadn't been exposed to it.
Sure.
So fast forward a number of years, and I had started this bra thing and was chugging along, training people around the world. And what I found was that the people that I was working with, they got really good at the technical proficiency of fitting. But when I said, okay, great, I'm so glad that your customers are happy. I'm so glad that you feel so confident. What are you going to do to make sure that your customers are going to come back sooner, spend more, tell their friends? Like, what's the plan?
Yeah.
They didn't have a plan. Almost across the board, they didn't have a plan. And they just looked at me and were like, well, I'm just going to keep giving them great fittings, like you taught me.
Yeah.
And I knew from my years in corporate that wasn't enough. And so over time, I started including more sort of business practices and customer retention and customer experience skills into the work that I was doing. And ultimately, I found that to be more satisfying and more creative, and the business shifted. And that's sort of how this company launched. So that's really how this business was born.
Yeah, fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about the company. What's the name? What do you guys do? How do you help folks?
So the company is called Alignmint Growth Strategies, and I say it that way because it's spelled Align, M-I-N-T. And the reason for that is because when you plant mint, it grows like crazy.
Oh, yes.
And when something's awesome, it's in mint condition. And when you make money, you make a mint. So very intentional spelling.
Very cool.
But also because, when we were talking to people about how to brand the company and what we wanted to be able to achieve on behalf of the customers that we served, alignment as a concept came up all the time. How do you do a better job of serving your customers? Well, you need to have this internal alignment and make sure that everybody inside your company knows what to do and is on the same page so that they can be successful cross-functionally in serving customers. How can you be consistent in your approach? And that's sort of the crux of what we do, is serving our clients so that they have the tools and the thinking and the training internally in order to be able to make those external experiences amazing every time.
Fantastic. So for folks listening, make sure to check out Alignmint, Mint, remember Mint, in the link in the description, and comment on it, and go to the LinkedIn, her LinkedIn, and let her know that you watched her video today. So that would be an awesome way to pay it forward in terms of those who are listening. So, Ali,
and I just want to say, please come and find me on LinkedIn. I always love that, but please let me know that you found me here, because I'm sure, just like a lot of people, I'm getting more and more of the spammy stuff. And so I really like to know who's coming for me instead of somebody who is coming to sell me something.
Yeah, great point. So, Ali, share us a story where someone pushed you or inspired you that you could do it, even though maybe you didn't think that you could, and the impact that that person had.
Yeah, I think when I first left corporate, I didn't leave in the best way. I left in a real stage of burnout and frustration, and I didn't know exactly where I was going next. I just knew that chapter of my life had come to an end.
Yeah.
And as I considered starting my first company, I didn't have that much confidence. I had really sort of been beaten up a little bit in the corporate world. And so I figure, okay, well, what do? You do your due diligence. And so I was, boy, was I due diligencing. And, and I think I got to the point of a little bit of, not to be jargony, but I think I got to the point of analysis paralysis, right? I was so busy in the thinking that it was getting in the way of my forward progress. And I had this meeting with this guy. I had met with him a few times. I was talking to him through my due diligence, and he's like, Ali, at a certain point, you just got to plug your nose and jump. You're ready. That was his advice. And it was the right advice, because you can't figure it all out in advance. There's a point at which you just have to, take the flyer and, do the due diligence. You got to do a little bit of aiming before you fire.
Yeah.
But you got to fire.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, because the reality is there's never going to be perfect information, right? So to your point of, we can spend time just continuing to search for the answer, right, instead of a good answer. And I like the plug your nose and take the plunge. That's great advice. What was his name?
Oh gosh.
Oh, sorry.
My good friend, what's his name? I can picture him perfectly. It was such a long time ago.
Right, well, it's going to come up later, so you'll just share it back with us when it pops into your head. So, Ali, what's your biggest learning as a business owner over the years?
Great question. I think my biggest learning is that you have to have boundaries. And it's something that I talk to my clients about a lot. Is there's this really unhelpful belief in the marketplace that the customer is always right. And boy, is that not helpful, because the customer is not always right. And that's a whole nother podcast. But
yes.
But people are so indoctrinated to think that that's true, and customers are so indoctrinated to think that that's true. And as a business, you have to have boundaries. You have to be able to say, these are our guidelines. These are our, these are our return policies. These are this is the way we operate. Sometimes it's also like, these are the people that we work with, right? It's, you have to be clear in your own mind about where your lines are. And so I think that that's something that has been a great learning for me, but also one that I share assertively with my clients, because it's so hard sometimes to define your own boundaries and to not get sucked into what's cool and popular or on trend, or what a really persuasive speaker might say. So
I like what you said. I like the boundary idea in terms of knowing where you stand, so that when it gets into that crunch time, right, of a customer's complaining, you don't have to be scrambling and wondering, how do I handle this? But instead, you already know, because you've set that rule and you've trained the team on that rule, and everybody can feel confident that they're doing what's been taught to them.
Yeah. The art of saying no is one that we, along with bra fitting, like, we don't teach that one a lot, right?
Right.
And it's so important.
I can imagine that, because you said that's a popular term, right? The customer's always right. There's tons of repetition of that. So the folks on the front line who are getting, that customer complaining, it's got to be a hard thing for them to be able to go through that experience of, okay, you know what? I've been trained this, so I'm going to hold my ground here and do what the training told me to do.
Right. Well, and that's why it's also a whole company initiative. If you don't support your team when they hold the line, and I see that a lot, right? Like, the people on the front line hold the line, and then somebody escalates, and then it's like, oh, no, we'll take care of you. And that's not helpful internally. It's one of the things that I thought about a lot when I was writing my book, Keep Your Customers. It's the thing that does, this is why that cross-functional training is so important. And it's why it has to go up to the executive level, because if the executives don't have the backs of the people that are downstream and customer facing, then those internal those employees aren't going to have the motivation to make the hard decisions.
Yeah. You also mentioned about sometimes you've got to fire a customer, and there are bad customers, right? And it's okay to say, right, we're not going to do business with you anymore because clearly we can't meet your needs, and maybe there's someone out there that can. How do you talk folks through that?
A lot of it is really, again, knowing who you are. So it's not just about knowing your boundaries, it's about knowing who you are. And so, who are the people that you serve best and most effectively? When I first started this business, because I was rolling out of my work in the lingerie sector, I worked with a lot of retailers. And I came to realize that so much of that business, so much of that customer interaction happens on social media. And I really, really don't like social media. And I really don't. Like, you do not see me with much of a presence at all. And, if you really don't like something, and that is the crux of where your customers are playing, that's probably not a great match. And so, it was not that easy for me to shift into this sort of, B2B realm, and thinking about complex onboarding and all the things that I focus on with my client selection. But, the more I knew who I was and was able to articulate it clearly, first of all, the easier it was for, when I talked, the people who were the right folks for me would hear, oh, she's talking about me. Like, it was easier to cut through the noise. But also I was able, and I am able, to better serve those customers, because even though the industries may change, the complexities are generally consistent. Even when the industries, like I said, are wildly different.
Yes. Wow. Hey, let's shift gears here. We know that business success doesn't happen in isolation. So is there a challenge. Tell us about one of the maybe your biggest challenge that you've had over the years, and a fellow business owner who maybe came alongside you and helped you to get through that.
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, I think that one of my biggest challenges has been social media.
Mm.
Um, it's hard to resist the lure of it. It's hard to resist. There's all of these voices out there saying you should be doing this, you should be doing that.
Yes.
You should be blogging, you should be posting on Facebook, you should be running Facebook ads. Like for me, for my customers, Facebook is not a good platform.
Sure.
That's not where I want to be having the conversation. But it took me a while to figure that out because there were
Mhm.
so many voices that said, no, this is the answer.
Yeah.
So I think that it's really that has been hard for me
Mm.
is, when somebody says with a lot of confidence, this is going to solve everything.
Yes.
Oh, well, I'm having a challenge there. So maybe that's going to solve everything.
Hmm.
And I think it goes back to, that same theme, but specifically my challenge really has been sort of figuring out what works for me and having the strength to say, no, it's not social media. That's not my
Uh-huh.
speed.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, and the reality is that something that works really well for me, right, may not work for you because we're different human beings and have different personalities and like you said, different likes and preferences. So it's important to, we call it test and measure, but it's important to say, okay, well, here are the things that I want to test and that I feel are aligned with who I am as a person and my likes and desires. And guess what? Even when we test, it doesn't mean it's going to work out. So
Yeah.
we've got to figure out what's the right way for us to, go to market and communicate to our potential customers. And it's not a one size fits all. There are hundreds and thousands of different ways to talk to people about our services.
Right. And look, sometimes you know where the line is because you tripped over it. I mean,
Yeah.
I've done some marketing things that I find to be super cringy looking back on it. I'm like, oh my God, that was so inauthentic. That was so right.
Yes, yes, yes. And to your point earlier about, the analysis paralysis, so it's good that you put that out there, right? Because the other version would be, no, I'm going to wait till it's perfect and I'm going to, not put anything out there and then nobody's going to know about me. So better to have, bad stuff, that we're learning from than nothing at all. So good for you.
Right.
Allie,
No, failure is a good thing, right?
it is. And I've I've heard this term multiple times. I love it. It's fail forward, right? Where
Yeah.
we test and measure, we learn it didn't work out, but what are the key nuggets that we got from it, and how do we apply that in the next version and the next version? And the reality is even, the biggest companies in the world make mistakes and fail. So, if they can do it, so can we.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, Allie. If I was to ask you to pick 3 people in your business owner journey that you're most grateful for them being there for your business's growth, who are those 3 people and how they help you?
I think I need to start with my dad. My dad was an entrepreneur also. And growing up and seeing him um, be, very successful and also not successful
Mm.
in moments. When I was in college, he was a real estate developer. The bottom dropped out of the real estate market,
Yeah.
and it materially impacted us. And he had to shut the company down. And seeing him, like you said, fail forward
Yeah.
and then ultimately find a path that was more satisfying for him and more lucrative
Mm.
was really inspiring.
Yeah.
I also just adored my dad. And I miss him like profoundly all the time. And so he always is my touchstone for who inspires me. Um, I have, so I like I said, I went to business school. And while this isn't a person, I do have a WhatsApp chat with some of my Wharton colleagues who are women.
Okay.
And I find that that is a great source for camaraderie. There are unique challenges to being a woman in business. Some of them are similarly business owners and have businesses that are kind of like mine in a lot of ways. And I can't pick one person because they're collectively such an incredible resource to me and such good friends. But when I have business questions, that's a group I go to and have a lot of faith in their being willing to answer me thoughtfully and chew through the tough topics with me.
Yeah.
And then I think I actually, if I think it through, it's interesting. A few years ago, I had a business partner and the partnership didn't survive. But what I learned in the partnership and the work that we did together was really excellent. And, I'm not at all sorry for the way that the journey went. And part of the reason is because I think we both were elevated by the work we did together. So I think that's the third person who's really inspired me and helped me grow as a business person.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that there's no regrets of it. And I've been in this a mindset program for the last 2.5 years. And one of the messages in there is that life happens for us, not to us. Right. And so what you just said reminded me of that, of, hey, yeah, it didn't ultimately work out, but I grew from it. It was what you both needed at that point in time to help you both grow and develop. And that's just awesome. How would you react to that statement of life happens for us, not to us? Does that resonate with you?
It does. It's interesting. I mean, I think that there's something very empowering in that, life happens to us feels a little, victim-y, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm just here and life is gonna, attack. But
Mm-hmm.
I do think that, there's this interesting spectrum of thinking about business where some of it is the nuts and bolts and you need that, and you've talked about tracking and measuring a couple of times, and I'm firmly of the belief that you have to do that, and at the same time I spend a lot of work on a lot of the work that I do with my clients is on how do you build relationships so that the people that you serve internally and externally feel seen, heard, and valued. And so I find that balance of the quantitative and the qualitative really matters. And you need to have both. And so I think of the life happens for you in that sort of same way, right? It's that like it's the people-oriented direction that when life happens for you, because you're always engaging with people.
Yes. And a way to help, or at least what I've learned to internalize it, when something feels like it's a bad situation, right? And it feels like it's happening to us. The question is to kind of step back and reflect with like, okay, so what good can come from this? Right? And it's like climbing a mountain, right? You can't climb a mountain straight up. You've kind of got to zigzag back and forth, right? And find the right path. So that life is happening for us concept is, I might feel like I've went way out in left field, right? And had this thing happen that makes no sense. And then, okay, what good can come from this is like, oh, there's something I'm supposed to learn here, or a skill I'm supposed to develop, or experience I'm supposed to have that's going to prepare me for the next step of the journey.
Yeah. I have a mountain saying also, and I don't know where it came from, and I have looked it up a number of times. And if anybody knows the origin of this, like, please let me know. But it is that life is like a path that winds its way around a mountain from the base to the summit, where you're always coming back to the same vista from a slightly different perspective.
Oh,
And I love that. I think about that all the time.
yeah. You mentioned the word empowering earlier. I mean, how much more empowering for all of us? Because the reality is owning a business is tough, right? There's lots of ups and downs and things that happen at it. So how much more empowering for all of the folks listening is it to know that all those things has a reason and a purpose, and it's helping us to climb the mountain and get to that summit. I love that perspective. Can you share that again? What was that, those words?
Sure. Life is like a path that winds around the mountain from the base to the summit, and you're always coming back to the same vista from a slightly different perspective.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Ali, as you think about the next 3 to 5 years, what's the biggest challenge that you see that you're going to face in reaching your goals? And who are the types of people that you're going to need to help you solve those challenges?
You know, I think if I look forward, it is the balance. You know, how do I balance between what I do myself, what I bring team members in to do, what I ask the tools that are changing before our eyes to do,
Yeah.
and how do I want to bring them in? You
Mm.
know, I was at a conference recently, and there was a CEO of a company that does video AI stuff, and oh my God, it is so cool.
Uh-huh.
And you know, you can change the script and it changes the video instantaneously. And I think about all of the ways that that has value for my clients, because they're putting out product information. And one of the real barriers to putting out good videos is the time that it takes to record videos and what happens when the product changes. By the time they've recorded the video, the product has been updated and it's out of date. Well,
Yeah.
this solves that problem. And that tool, I don't mean to be pitching for this tool, but it's like, um, you can instantaneously translate into
Oh,
over
wow.
100 languages.
Wow.
So when that is a tool that's out there, like, how can I take advantage of it in a way that is in alignment with what I do and in alignment with how I want to present myself? You
Mhm.
know, I think these are all the questions that we're asking about AI in general. Like, how can I use this effectively and authentically? And well, I don't know if everybody's asking about the authentically part, but
Well, I like that you are, because it goes back to what you were saying earlier, right? In terms of, getting those pitches on LinkedIn, is if it's not who you are, right? It's not your DNA. It's not the value proposition that you're providing to your clients, then it may not make sense. So I love that you're exploring it in a way of how does it make sense for us to be able to leverage it to help us be more efficient and effective, but still be true to our core values and our beliefs.
right. The first time I got an AI based pitch, I was so impressed, right? Like, Ali, we took a look at your website. Let us show you. And I was like, whoa, that's amazing. And then when I got the next one and I figured out that it was just
Yeah.
AI, I felt so suckered, you know, like, oh, they didn't like me, you know, it wasn't
Right.
personal at
Yes.
all.
Yes. Yes. There's a very delicate balance between using, AI or automation, and right, to be more efficient and effective, but still, coming across in a real way, and in a way of, wanting to have real connections with people and have real conversations. And I think we'll, as business owners, we'll wrestle with that forever, right?
Yeah. I think it also depends on how, if you're using it in just a bald selling, you know, environment, then it ends up feeling, I think for me, you know, as soon as I detect it, I'm like, ew, you know,
Yeah.
gross. But I get these handwritten notes from Chewy. I love Chewy, the dog
Yeah.
and the pet online one. Yeah, they're huge.
Yeah.
Um, and I use them fairly, I choose them over everything else. And in part because they do a really good job with customer service.
Yeah.
And so I get these handwritten notes. I am 100% sure. I mean, I've never been confused, right? Nobody's sitting in the home office saying like, oh, Allie's dog has a birthday coming up. We should
Right.
send a
Yes.
card.
Yes.
But because they're not doing it for sales,
Yes.
like they are obviously, but it's not what they're writing about.
Yes.
It's like, oh, they are prioritizing the relationship with me. I'm not confused about the fact that this is automated.
Yep.
It's not actually handwritten.
Yep.
But but I recognize that they're prioritizing the relationship building.
Yes.
And I appreciate that.
Yes.
And I think that therein lies the difference, right?
Yep. With we'll just use the LinkedIn example. If the same automation tools were set up to, create value or to build a relationship or to have invite to a coffee meet, right? Things that are more about let's know, like, and trust one another versus, oh, here's my thing I'm selling and I'd like you to buy it, even though I have no idea if you even need it.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Last question here, Allie. So Jim Rohn, amazing business guru, wrote tons of books. One of his quotes is, "We become the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with." So you've already alluded to your WhatsApp community, but as you think about that quote, what advice would you have for business owners who are doing it on their own and feeling like they have to do it on their own, that they can't reach out to others?
I mean, I would say that you can always reach out to others. You can always find ways to get support. And that is the benefit of this more connected digital world that we live in. Even if you are in a LinkedIn group or a Facebook group, there's always communities that you can tap into in order to talk to like-minded people who are facing the same kinds of challenges that you're facing. And it's the balance is, I think, with guarding your time aggressively.
Yeah.
There are so many ways, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. There are so many ways to use your time these days, and you have to be really thoughtful about how you want to use it. Like how you want to balance working in your business versus working on your business, how you want to balance working versus not working and using that time effectively. I'm encouraged when I see the pendulum shift away from that, like, I wake up at 4 a.m. and I grind it out, and by the time you're having your coffee, that was so in vogue for a while.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's awesome to see that going away.
Yes.
It's so shamey and gross, right?
The hustle and grind culture is horrible. I talk about it a lot because we, on the other side of it, and most people don't necessarily know this as much, is, the biggest reason. So we all know that the stats are pretty against business owners of, 80% of businesses fail. And the number one reason for that is burnout. And right. And then we've got all these people celebrating and shaming others about the hustle and grind culture. And, you gotta work 24/7. Well, no, right. There's a period of time that maybe you do, right? In the first 1 and 2 years of starting a new business, there's a lot to learn and you got to figure a bunch of things out. So yeah, you're going to put in extra hours, but it's not sustainable, right?
Right. And therein again lies that magic of making sure that you know who you are and listening to the voices that feel right for you. And if you're feeling shamed by somebody that you're listening to, kind of pay attention to that.
Yes.
There's no reason to feel shamed. There's things that you can learn. There's things that you can do better.
Yeah.
But let's kick shame to the curb.
Yes. Amen to that. And for those who are getting their information off social media, you all know this, but it'll just be good to remind you of it. Almost nobody tells the hard stories or the life lessons, right? Everybody's putting their best foot forward. So don't believe the hustle and grind hype, because it's not healthy long term.
Right. Wait, what? People aren't 100% truthful in social media? Shocked.
And you mentioned this already, but the shift has certainly happened, right? I think COVID has helped with that, and just the heightened awareness of people's mental health. And we're starting to look at things in a better way in terms of what's right for us holistically, as opposed to, that work culture.
Yeah.
And it seems to be more prevalent here in the US than, you look at places like Europe, where they get, mandatory 6 weeks holidays a year. It's not, it's definitely not everywhere around the world.
Right. Well, that could be the topic for the next podcast.
Indeed, right? Allie, it sounds like you've been blessed with some incredible people who have helped you along your journey. If they were all here on the show today, what would you want to say to them?
I mean, that I've learned from all of them, even the interactions that haven't always been easy. I've learned, I've grown, and I like who I am. And that only comes with all of the steps that came before.
I love that. I like who I am statement. That is it's so deep and powerful beyond just the words. Congratulations. That is amazing.
Thanks.
It's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for being on the show, Allie.
It's been such a pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Self-Made is a Myth show with your host, Coach Tim Campsall. Please help spread this movement by liking and subscribing to our show and following us on Facebook and LinkedIn, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. To join our movement, go to bemadtogether.com. Okay, folks, that's a wrap. Please pay it forward and be sure to tune in next time to the Self-Made is a Myth podcast.